Good morning. Here we are again. It's June 12th, 7 o'clock in the morning, and it's already about 80 degrees out here and rising. I'm going to take you on a tour around the house again just to show you what's going on. It's pretty much summertime here now. This camellia garden is just greening up, really. It's just a matter of keeping it maintained until the fall. It's doing fine. My bottle tree is still working. Old Southern tradition that it traps witches inside the bottle, so you never want to turn those bottles upside down because whatever witches are trapped in there are going to get out. Here's where I planted my string beans that you had seen in seeds the last couple of times. The birds seem to have left them alone. They were planted 4 days ago, and they're looking pretty good. My agapanthus are starting to bloom. You can see this one has 3 flower stalks, just starting to open. And this one just has 1. Go figure, they're just on one side of the sidewalk and the other, but for some reason, one grows better. This garden is really lush today. You can see my husky tomatoes are coming up, the cherry tomatoes. I should really start picking them. It's almost tall enough to start bending down along the top of the fence. This was a seedling that came up from last year of the same husky tomato. It is a hybrid, so I was kind of surprised that it came up the same. My bee balm is in blossom. When the sun is out, the bees, well, they have been working it over. There's just none here right now. Oh, there's one. They do like this plant, and it's in the heat of the summer day, it exudes a bergamot flavor or scent. It's got a little bit mix of everything in here. That's lemon balm over there. The female flower, or I should say cone, of the sago palm is now pretty much fully developed. This little seating area has come together fine. My Australian tree fern is still sending up fronds. That will get tall eventually if it survives. Chrysanthemums are starting to pass over. I cleaned up this garden this week. There were a bunch of crepe myrtles. My neighbor had a large crepe myrtle tree. You see the stump there, but it was cut out 2 years ago and it keeps sending up suckers all over. Those are actually my neighbor's hydrangeas. The blooms tend to face me for some reason, as the same with this Rose of Sharon tree overhead. Flowers are now starting to slow down a little bit. You can see there's less on the ground. Some kind of a bug. Since it's not a grasshopper, I'll leave it. The only thing I really kill are grasshoppers because they like to eat my plants. I have to keep this gate closed because Mimi will run out front, and she's not as young as she used to be. She might get hit by a car. There's my angel trumpet, the Brugmansia, coming up. It's an orange color, or peach color. Oh, here's my Virginia creeper, planted by God, and I kind of like the look of it. Where I grew up in upstate New York, Virginia creeper is really a weed, but it does turn a beautiful red color in the fall. So when the birds, I guess, sprinkled the seed there, I thought that's a good spot for it. I'll let it crawl up my fence. This is a potato vine. I used to have it on a trellis on this fence. There's a second one as well over here with something coming up from a neighbor. I don't know, some kind of a caladium. And the potato vine is beautiful. It grows quite tall in 1 year. The only problem is it attracts lily beetles. And so I can't have lilies because the lily beetles will destroy all of my lilies, and they also cut holes or eat holes in the potato vine. So it just looks like a lacework vine after a while, and I just gave up on growing it. It is a pass-along plant, which means it's a pest. It does have little potatoes, or they can be big in some cases, that hang down. You can't buy it anywhere, but like I say, it's usually a pass-along plant. If anyone has it, just take one of the potatoes and it will spread. You can see here the bougainvillea is nice and green. My basil's still doing well. There's the bougainvillea on that side. This bed is looking pretty good. It looks like I lost just one plant, but the ones on either side are doing well enough that I don't think I'm going to miss it. This one sent up a sprout, as did this one, so only half of the plant died out, which is okay. There's baby. Poor baby is, oh, and there's Mimi. I didn't even see her there. She's sleeping on a chair, ignoring baby. They're stepsisters. But poor baby is lonesome. Oscar has disappeared. Oscar is a feral blonde cat that we had. And I think he showed up in one of my videos, in a short. But he used to follow baby around all over. Wherever she was, he was. And he just kind of disappeared this last week. He may come back. He found another home somewhere. Let's see. I am going to be moving this purple plant. I've called it Wandering Jew. It's really not a Wandering Jew. That's just kind of what I called it, because it reminds me of the Wandering Jews I used to grow when I was in college. It actually is spiderwort, or Tradescantia, and I'm going to be transplanting some of it, or I should say propagating it, and I'll show you how you do that. Normally I wouldn't take one with a flower, but you basically just snap it off, and wherever there is a joint, here, 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 that's where roots are going to form. So what I usually do is I take a bunch of cuttings like this. I wouldn't normally, I'll probably pinch that flower out. But you'd basically just take a bunch of cuttings, and I take a pencil or a big screwdriver, anything to poke a hole, and poke a pretty deep hole, and then just jam that in the hole, and it will root. To tell you the truth, if you tossed it like that on the ground and left it, it would root. Once when you buy one of these plants, you never need to buy it again. It's extremely easy to propagate. This plant's not doing real well over here. I've got to clean it, give it some light, cut some of these fronds off so that it'll grow like that one has. Here everything is just lush and green. Nothing really much is blooming. My statue of David is still looking good. It's a water bath for the birds. Today I'm going to be working along this back fence. I have creeping fig growing up a telephone pole. I used to have 3 big oak trees here, and the creeping fig used to grow up the oak trees. I'll see if I can get a shot of the telephone pole. There it is. And the creeping fig grew. I planted it. I actually bought it. Friends of mine told me I was silly for doing that. But I planted it at the bottom of my 3 oak trees, and it grew it was about a 6-inch plant, and it grew maybe 6 inches the first year, and then maybe to 3 feet the second year. And the third year it started shooting up the tree about 12 feet. And within about 5 years, it was to the top of the tree. And when it gets to the top, it then starts branching outward. And there are actually little fig fruits on that. The problem, it's very hard to eradicate. And I left it on the telephone pole because it screens the telephone pole. But the problem with that is, it's also, you can see along the inside of the fence, it's growing up the fence. And if I'm not careful, it'll overtake this undergrowth here, and everything will be covered, including the house, with creeping figs. So 2 or 3 times a year I need to go and rip it out. It's not real easy to rip out when it's established. There you see the cutting of my Phatzahedras doing well. This is rising nicely. This is another Brugmansia. This one's white, and it should get about maybe 8 to 10 foot tall. Oh, Miss Mimi got up. She's following me around. The male blossom on this cycad is starting to pass. It will eventually wilt and fall over, and eventually you can just pluck it out. I'm always very careful touching these leaves because they have little pickers on the edges of them. So I don't like to touch them because they can puncture the skin in a skinny minute. My Canary Island date palm is looking good. It's nice and green. Babies come here to say, "What am I doing?" Here's my knockout roses. They have a nice scent. Still getting a few strawberries. You can see here, they're still coming on. I did clean this garden up this week. That's really what I had been working on, and I've decided to leave some negative space. I took out a bunch of plants because it was like a tangled mess. And then I got to thinking, it kind of looks good just thinned down. So I've got this one Pindo palm and Forsythia and 3 yellow jasmine and some encore azaleas in the back. But I thought I might just leave all of this open. However, along here in the front, I thought I would put a row of that Tradescantia or spiderwort, the purple stuff. So I'll be doing that later today. I also weeded a little back in here. And you can see the snowball viburnum is looking nice back there. If you hear me blowing or swatting, there are mosquitoes out. So I've decided not to put anything in front of this little rock wall. When I first came here, there are no rocks in this part of Alabama. And so I actually bought them at Lowe's. They're lava rock. And I made a couple of rock walls. This is one of them. But I always planted something on this side of it. And I just decided this year, as in that garden, to kind of just have some negative space and give your eye a breather to sort of really take in what's left in the garden and enjoy the individual plants that are here. Here you can see after cutting back, this is the white jasmine. It's doing well, sprouting. You see all the new sprouts coming. I did harvest my blueberries. To tell you the truth, I only got 2. I'd made the mistake of watering them before I picked them, and I knocked a few off and kind of lost them in the undergrowth. But that's about it for today. Oh, there is a couple more things I wanted to show you on the deck. Here's where I planted some of that spiderwort in the middle here in front of the statue where I had snapdragons in the winter. I decided to put about a dozen cuttings in here. They never wilted. It gets up to 90 degrees during the day. I just took them, snapped off pieces from here and here. So I thought, like I said, I would put some underneath the palm on that side. So I'll have sort of a purple understory all around this area. If you read gardening books, I swear a lot of them must be written by recovering alcoholics because they always have steps. 10 steps to a better garden, 10 steps to planting, or 12 steps, whatever, to planting. I don't believe in that. Get a plant, stick it in the ground, case closed. It either lives or dies. There are no rules with gardening. Oh, there goes Mimi. She wants to go in because it's a little hot out here. I did want to show you the progress made of my pitcher plant. These are leftover string beans that I kept in reserve just in case anything ate the ones in the front yard. I had planted seeds in the front yard and they sprouted up nicely, and the birds came and plucked every one of them out. So I had to start them in back here. Actually, I just left them on top of that container, and that's where they sprouted. Here's my Nepenthes, and it has definitely grown. I'll put my finger here, get the dirt off of it, to give you an idea of size. But these have grown really nicely. If you remember, they were a little bigger than my thumbnail when I first bought them. And they've got a bunch of new leaves coming out, 3, 4, and each one's got a little pitcher starting to come. So they're doing well. Here's my roses. This is what I was telling you about. That was a beautiful fresh rose, kind of like that yesterday. But they just bolt or open up really fast in this heat and then kind of look like that. So needless to say, I cut them and bring them in, and they'll last for 4 or 5 days inside the house. And there's my caladiums and my other pitcher plant. Despite the birds eating it, it's doing well. Turns out the birds that are eating it are, I caught them at it a couple days ago. It was sitting out at the deck over here. It didn't seem to bother them any. They were blue jays, and they come in and grab one piece of cat food and then fly away. But they're the ones that were ripping out bits of my pitcher plant. I cut these bananas this morning. You can see them bleeding a little over here, but now that they're getting taller, the leaves droop down and they were covering over my potted plants. And they need sun as well, so I had to get rid of them, or the leaves, that is. Plenty more will be coming. These mums are still looking good. I've had them there since last November. Almost will have to just play it by ear because they're doing so nicely. I may not want to yank them up after the blooming is done. I'm planning on putting these pelargoniums in the pots. You have to get these early in the season. I don't know why it is, but they only stock them in the stores in town, like in May, and then you never see them again for sale for the rest of the year. So I bought those 2 in readiness to put in these pots eventually. But we'll see. They're doing well where they are. I may not replant them. But there you have it for today. Have a good day. I'll talk to you again soon.